Hi, this is Gene again. So this is video lesson 2. I hope you've all had a chance to kind of think about this honeymoon period and how your perceptions or your misperceptions of what's going on in China could actually affect some of the decisions that you make. Today, we're really going to be talking about GUANXI. So I don't think there's anybody in the world who hasn't heard this term GUANXI, but from my experience, most foreigners or most Americans really don't understand the nuances of how GUANXI relationships is different than just the relationships that you form in your fraternity or with your business partners or even with people in your family. And the thing that everybody really needs to understand is that how we treat people with closer GUANXI relationships in America or in the West is actually, in many times, the opposite of how people with close GUANXI relationships in China treat each other. Okay, so as a foreigner, it's really important to understand what is GUANXI and what is the nuances of developing GUANXI relationships in the Chinese cultural context and how that might be different than what you're actually accustomed to as far as just developing close working relationships or close business relationships. So first of all, Chinese GUANXI is based on a system of reciprocity. And what does that mean? That means that in order to have GUANXI relationships or to maintain GUANXI relationships, there has to be a continual exchange of goodwill. So a lot of times when Chinese are bringing you gifts or they're giving you things, a lot of that times is their way of exchanging goodwill with you. Sometimes goodwill doesn't have to be money. So the way that a lot of foreigners think about this system of reciprocity in China, a lot of foreigners think it's actually something that's corrupt because we believe that giving money in order to help facilitate something in business is actually not only unethical, but in many cases it's actually against the law. In China, that's just simply not how Chinese people think. So you shouldn't think of the exchange of goodwill as something corrupt. Now, what is something of value in China that doesn't involve money? Okay, so if you know anything about doing business in China, you know anything about forming close GUANXI relationships, you've probably heard that Chinese people really care about their face, or in Chinese we call it 面子. Okay, so sometimes giving face is another way to exchange goodwill. Causing loss of face is going to work almost literally and figuratively in the opposite direction. So you should always be conscious that you don't cause anybody in China a loss of face. And a lot of times you might be doing things that are quite normal in American culture or Western culture, but in Chinese culture, it actually causes somebody a loss of face. For example, giving somebody constructive feedback or constructive criticism. If you do that in a public setting, Chinese generally don't interpret that as something constructive. They interpret that as a loss of face. Okay, so when you begin going to China and you're experiencing this honeymoon period as you start to form these new relationships, you have to keep a lot of different things in mind. So there's a lot of moving parts. A lot of people are going to be giving you a lot of face because of your status and your level and the fact that you are a foreigner and you're from the United States. If you think about it in a negative way, you could think that they're very disingenuous or they're giving you a lot of lip service. But if you think about it in the proper cultural context, they're just doing what's natural in order to begin forming GUANXI relationships. So one of the things that we really get into when we talk about becoming a master of cross-cultural performance is we really get into how important your attitude, your mindset, and your approach actually are. And it really doesn't matter how good your product or technology is. It really doesn't matter how successful or respected you were as a leader before they sent you to China or before they selected you and sent you to China. The only thing that matters when you go to China and you start forming these guanxi relationships is how you are perceived. And that requires that you know how Chinese perceive you based on who you are. You're empathetic to what the Chinese value and what they feel. And ultimately, you understand the system of reciprocity and the giving and receiving of face and the exchange of goodwill in a context that doesn't have any negative connotations. It's not something that's corrupt. It's not something that's unethical. It's really just something that's cultural. So if you can really get over kind of your own mind, your own internal obstacles, then that's going to really help you a lot in cultivating successful guanxi relationships. So in the next video, we're going to extend this system of reciprocity and cultivating guanxi relationships into why so many Americans or foreigners, when they go to China, they have difficulty finding the right partner, or they find a partner and it starts off really good, but then over time, the strange behavior starts happening and the partner is not doing what they agreed or what you expected, and it just turns into a very dysfunctional and kind of chaotic relationship. So we're going to talk about that in the third and final lesson. Thank you for listening. Again, my name is Gene Xu. This is the China Essentials Blueprint video series. Please leave your questions and comments in the comment section, and I would love to have more direct engagement and talk about the issues that you're experiencing in China.